James Dolan just did something Knicks fans genuinely haven't heard from him in decades, publicly talking about winning a second straight championship parade before this season has even started. I've gone through his confident comments, the real reasoning behind them, and a separate, genuinely tense moment from the actual championship parade that's still generating headlines months later. Every quote, every detail. Let's break it all down right now. So before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel because this is a genuinely revealing look at where James Dolan's headspace actually is right now. Let's start with Dolan's genuinely notable comments because the tone itself represents a real shift for an owner who spent years being criticized by this exact fan base. Speaking during a Sphere Entertainment earnings call, the Knicks owner expressed unusually direct optimism about the 2026-27 season, highlighting the continuity of the championship roster and suggesting the coming campaign could genuinely be the most enjoyable of his entire ownership tenure. That's a genuinely bold statement from someone who's owned this franchise since 1999, spanning decades of largely disappointing basketball before this past season's historic breakthrough finally arrived. Making that kind of statement on an actual corporate earnings call, rather than simply in a casual media interview, adds a layer of real formal significance too, since it's the kind of comment that gets scrutinized by investors and analysts, not just basketball fans. Dolan's confidence isn't coming from nowhere either. The roster is genuinely back, the stars are still in their prime, and the championship window remains wide open heading into this coming season. There's real, tangible reason for the organization to embrace the possibility of repeating rather than simply hiding from those expectations. The Knicks clearly want this specific celebration to become something closer to a genuine tradition rather than a singular, once-in-a-generation moment, and Dolan's own public comments reflect exactly that ambition. It's a genuinely different posture from an organization that spent years simply hoping to make the playoffs, now openly discussing sustained, repeated championship contention as a realistic annual expectation. Of course, whether an actual second parade happens will depend on real, practical factors, health, depth, and this roster's ability to keep improving even as every single rival around the league studies exactly what made this championship team so successful in the first place. But the owner's own confidence still sends a genuinely unmistakable message to the rest of the fan base. New York isn't approaching this new season satisfied with just one title. They want more, and Dolan himself is apparently willing to say that out loud months before training camp has even opened. It's worth remembering just how different this specific tone actually is compared to how Dolan has typically been perceived by this fan base over the years. For much of his ownership tenure, Dolan drew real, persistent criticism for erratic decision-making, and a franchise that consistently underperformed relative to its market size and resources. A single championship doesn't erase that entire history overnight, but it clearly has shifted how comfortable Dolan feels publicly projecting confidence about this organization's actual direction going forward. Now let's shift to a completely different, considerably more contentious moment connected to this same championship celebration. One that's still generating real headlines months later. During the actual championship parade back in June, Dolan appeared to take a genuine, public swipe at New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani while speaking directly after him during the ticker tape parade and rally at City Hall. The two had already been sparring well before that specific event too, with previous tension stemming from a canceled watch party at Madison Square Garden, a dispute where both Dolan and Mamdani had publicly blamed each other once the city extended certain restrictions around the arena. That earlier watch party dispute had already generated real, negative headlines during the championship run itself, meaning the tension on display at the actual parade wasn't some sudden, isolated flare-up, but rather the continuation of a genuinely ongoing rivalry between the two men. During his own speech at City Hall, Mamdani spent roughly 8 minutes discussing the team's history, praising the franchise for bringing what he called pure, unfiltered joy back to New York City, and specifically name-dropping both current and former players, including Charles Oakley, a fan-favorite former Knick who's actually been involved in an ongoing legal dispute with Dolan ever since a physical altercation over his own courtside seats back in 2017. Standing mere feet away from Mamdani as he delivered that speech, Dolan reportedly didn't hide his own feelings about the mayor at all, visibly showing his disdain once Mamdani finished running through that list of favorite players over the years. Choosing to specifically highlight Oakley by name, given his own well-documented history with Dolan, was almost certainly not an accidental detail in Mamdani's speech, adding an extra layer of pointed subtext to an already tense shared stage. The broader Dolan-Mamdani rivalry actually traces back even further than the parade itself, too. Their dispute originally began during the mayoral election cycle, when Mamdani's campaign used the actual Knicks logo in some of its own promotional materials, prompting the team to issue a formal cease and desist letter in response. In a separate, related incident, the White House had also used the Knicks logo in a post shortly after the previous year's election, and the Knicks organization similarly reached out asking that post be removed as well. That kind of layered political tension bubbling up specifically around a championship celebration meant to be purely joyful adds a genuinely unusual wrinkle to what should have otherwise been an uncomplicated, celebratory moment for the entire city. It's a genuinely fascinating contrast, watching Dolan project pure, confident optimism about basketball specifically, while simultaneously carrying real, visible tension into a public celebration meant to represent unity across an entire city. Both storylines say something real about where this organization currently stands, one reflecting genuine on-court momentum and ambition, the other reflecting some of the same complicated, occasionally combative public persona that's followed Dolan throughout much of his ownership tenure. Step back and look at the complete picture here, and both of these stories capture something genuinely true about James Dolan as this franchise's owner right now. On one hand, he's finally been rewarded with the championship this fan base waited over 5 decades for, and he's clearly ready to lean into that success with real, public confidence about doing it again. On the other hand, his own personal tensions and public persona haven't fundamentally changed just because the team finally won, still surfacing in genuinely awkward, visible ways even during what should have been an entirely celebratory moment for the whole city. So here's where everything stands. James Dolan has publicly expressed genuine confidence about the Knicks capturing a second consecutive championship this coming season, citing the continuity of this roster and calling this potentially the most enjoyable season of his entire ownership tenure. At the same time, his own visible tension with New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani during the actual championship parade continues generating real headlines. A reminder that even historic championship moments don't fully erase the more complicated aspects of Dolan's public persona as this franchise's longtime owner. So tell me what you think. Do you believe James Dolan's confidence about a repeat championship is genuinely justified given this roster's continuity? Or do you think that kind of public optimism this early risks jinxing the season? And what did you make of the visible tension between Dolan and Mayor Mamdani during the actual championship parade? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you catch every update as it happens. I'll be back soon with more Knicks news.